I think if we deployed as part of a US-led coalition, we could deploy an effort comparable to the forces that went in 2001, which were relatively modest in size and for short notice, a short duration deployment. So I think we could certainly do that. I think if you're talking about the 2006 Helmand deployment, then of course the initial deployment to Helmand we quickly found was not big enough, and we had to ramp it up. And really, we never got to a point of stability in Helmand until the Americans also joined us. We ended up with a force of getting on for 30,000 Alliance troops in Helmand. Having a one-off deployment of 10,000 British troops to southern Afghanistan, you could do that. The challenge would be sustaining it over a long period of time. That was a challenge then. It would be the big challenge now. So given that we've reduced the size of the army, but also because we have other commitments in NATO, which are greater than they were then, and we wouldn't want to simply abandon our NATO commitments for this. I think realistically, the size of sustained deployment we would be able to keep in somewhere like Afghanistan would be significantly smaller than we had last time. If we knew then what we know now, then I think we would have concluded it was the wrong thing to do to deploy to southern Afghanistan. In a way, the initial deployment, overthrowing the Taliban, I think still, even now you can argue that was the right thing to do. The initial mistakes were more about the politics, and indeed General Nick Carter recently said that from the beginning we should have been negotiating for a government of national unity, including the Taliban, from that initial point. But the Americans always resisted that. So we got the politics wrong. But I think going in 2006, without the Americans actually initially, because the Americans were themselves focused on Iraq then, exposed the army to a conflict they could never have won without such massive forces. It was just unsustainable, and so it proved. And intervening in the South, the rationale given at the time, one of the most prominent rationales was opium production in Helmand, and that actually increased after our deployment rather than reducing it. And the presence of the Taliban in Helmand, partly because of our presence, it was a recruiting agent for the Taliban. So on multiple dimensions, I think it was, in retrospect, it wasn't the right deployment to carry out. I don't think it will be reversed. I think the dilemma the United States had, given that President Trump had already started this process very well advanced, that it would not have been enough for the United States simply to maintain the presence they had 3 or 4 months ago. If the United States had announced it wasn't, after all, going to fulfill President Trump's promise, there would have to have been a significant reinforcement of American troops and a commitment basically to stay for a much longer period of time. And I think there would have still been an intensification of the Taliban offensive. And I think it would have been, I don't buy the argument that if the Afghan army had been given another 2 or 3 years, they would have been a lot better. I just don't see that. The aid program for the Afghan security forces has been underway for more than a decade. It's been a long process. I think, for me, I think it's a genuine difficulty, because it's one thing saying we've only given it another year, it would have been fine. I remember hearing those arguments a decade ago in terms of the Afghan surge, the early years of the Obama presidency, and it just didn't deliver. So you would have been talking about a semi-permanent commitment. But I mean, of course, it's a terrible human tragedy what's unfolding in Afghanistan. It's not clear the Taliban will win. But that will be up to Afghans to determine, not, I think, for the international community.